There is no other person in history about whom so much has been written. Billions of people believe in him. For hundreds of years, academics, theologians, and archaeologists have been researching him. Every line has been examined. Every word has been interpreted. But there is a strange gap in the Bible, a very strange gap. The Bible mentions Jesus' temple visit at the age of 12, then silence. Exactly 18 years. The next record begins with the baptism scene at the age of 30. Stop. 18 years. The most important period of a human life. Adolescence. Youth. The years when identity is formed. The period of discovering the world. And the Bible dismisses these 18 years with just one sentence. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. That's it. So where did he grow up? With whom? What did he learn? Where did he go? No one asked, or they didn't want to ask. Today, we are pursuing this question, and what we find will make you think deeply. First, you need to know this. There are 4 Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And these 4 Gospels tell the life of Jesus. But this narration is extremely selective. There is the birth scene. There is the escape to Egypt. There is the return to Nazareth. Then, a single scene. In the Gospel of Luke, the 12-year-old Jesus is debating with religious leaders in the temple in Jerusalem. Despite his youth, he asks such deep questions and gives such wise answers that everyone there is amazed. His mother Mary and father Joseph think they have lost him and panic. They search for days. Finally, they find him in the temple. Luke writes a final sentence for this scene. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. And in the next line, Jesus is already 30 years old. 18 years, a single sentence. The church usually fills this gap like this. Jesus stayed in Nazareth. He worked alongside his father, who was a carpenter. He had an ordinary youth. Maybe so. But there are those who question this answer, and they have very interesting documents in their hands. The year 1887. Russian journalist Nicholas Notovich crosses the Himalayas and reaches the Ladakh region of present-day India. While staying at the Hemis monastery, he hears something astonishing from the abbot of the monastery. In the monastery library, there was an ancient manuscript describing a traveling prophet named Jesus, or by his local name, Issa. Notovich asks for these texts to be translated. He takes notes, and in 1894, he publishes these notes under the title, The Unknown Life of Jesus Christ. The story told in the text is this. At 13 or 14 years old, Jesus leaves Israel. He sets out toward India with trade caravans. For years, he learns Hinduism and Buddhism. He visits Varanasi, Jagannath, and other holy cities. He asks questions to the Brahmins. He debates them. He especially opposes the caste system. He reads the Veda texts to members of the lower castes. In the India of that period, this was an extremely dangerous act. Then, passing through Persian lands, he returns to Israel. At age 29 or 30, he is baptized by John. This claim created a tremendous controversy. The church rejected the text. Some academics accused Notovich of forgery. Other researchers visiting the monastery reached different conclusions. Some saw the text, others could not. But what is interesting is this. There are striking similarities between the Jesus described by Notovich and the Jesus in the Bible. Both advocate for the poor. They criticize the rich. They see people as equal. The deep philosophical similarities between Buddhism and Christianity make it difficult for some scholars to ignore this story completely. So, where do these similarities come from? We don't know the answer, but the question is very big. The year 1947. In the Qumran caves of Palestine, a shepherd boy accidentally makes one of the most important archaeological discoveries in history, the Dead Sea Scrolls. These scrolls belong to a Jewish sect called the Essenes, who lived before and after the birth of Jesus. A community living in desert monasteries, away from society, passing on mystic teachings and providing education within a strict discipline. And some researchers asked this question: did Jesus' lost years not pass with this community? According to this thesis, the young Jesus might have left Galilee and joined the Essene community in Qumran. Here, he learned the Torah deeply. He developed spiritual practices. He learned baptism rituals. The baptism rituals. The baptism practices of the Essenes are extremely similar to the baptism of John. And the Bible says that after his baptism, Jesus stayed in the desert for 40 days. This is a practice that fits Essene discipline. There is no definitive proof, but the similarities are striking. There are theories other than India and the Essenes, and each one is consistent within itself. The Egypt theory. Some academics suggest that Jesus spent his youth in Alexandria. At that time, Alexandria was home to the world's largest library. Jewish, Greek, and Egyptian philosophies were intertwined. If Jesus truly possessed such deep wisdom, it is difficult to explain this without a background in a major learning center. The Buddhist connection. The similarities between some of Jesus' teachings and Buddhism have been examined by dozens of scholars. The teaching that a rich man cannot enter heaven and the detachment from worldly bonds in Buddhism share a parallel too strong to ignore. But is this similarity a direct contact or a natural overlap of universal spiritual teachings? It is not possible to prove this for now. The Church's answer. And of course, there is the view defended by the Church. Jesus stayed in Nazareth. He worked alongside his father, who was a carpenter. He continued learning in the synagogue. In that period, the religious education of Jewish men was extremely comprehensive. According to this view, there is no need for long travels for the wisdom of Jesus. Perhaps they are right. But then, one must ask this question. Despite all these theories, why does the Church never take this question seriously? The answer is theological. If Jesus learned from other religions and other cultures, then the uniqueness of his teachings becomes questionable. The idea of divine revelation weakens. The image of the Son of God cracks. That is why the question is dangerous. That is why silence was preferred. But according to historical scholars, the real issue is this. The Gospels were not written as historical biographies. They were written as texts of faith. The author's purpose was not to record every year of Jesus' life. It was to convey the fundamental message of the faith. Therefore, those 18 years are not a problem for the Church. They are simply a period that was left outside the scope. But the human mind cannot tolerate gaps, and this 18-year silence has continued to make people think for 2,000 years. We have seen a lot today. If Notovich's Indian manuscript is correct, Jesus is a traveling sage who studied in Asia. If the Essene thesis is correct, he is a hermit who developed spiritual discipline in the Qumran deserts. If the Church is right, he is an ordinary carpenter who grew up quietly in Nazareth. But pay attention. No matter which theory you adopt, the result does not change. That man stepped onto the stage at the age of 30. He lived a public life for only 3 years, and those 3 years split human history in two. Now I ask you, where do you think these 18 years were spent? Write in the comments. I am truly curious about what you think. And let me tell you this. This question leads you to a much deeper subject, because the issue of the lost years is not the only secret of Jesus. In the next video, we will discuss the topic, was Jesus married? The evidence no one taught you. Subscribe now so you don't miss it.